Welcome back to the Bright Podcast, everyone. Thank you so much for taking time out of your day, your busy day, busy schedules, to listen to me talk. And I hope that while listening to this, you feel encouraged, that you experience a new found hope, and you feel renewed, not by anything that I say, but what we read from God's Word, and that what we study, that we read and what we study today, you can apply that to your life and embrace this new hope. It's not even a new hope we're talking about; it's the same hope that we can always have, but it's just a different angle that we're going to take a look at in this passage. So in this season of the Right Podcast, what we talked about last week is we talked about Noah's Ark and the water that lifted the ark. And in this season, we're taking some look at something like that is water, and that water being something that is so simple but can be turned into something so extraordinary, not by anything that mankind does, but by something that the all-powerful, almighty, all-loving, all-knowing God is doing. And that it's meaningful to the people that it affected in the Bible, but also the people that these passages have effects for the rest of time, because we have our Bibles, we can read these passages whenever we want and relive, if you will, these real life stories. And so as we read these passages over the next several weeks, I hope that they take on this new meaning, they have a new meaning to you, and not simply about what I say, but what you think on and what you reflect. If you truly listen and you truly go back and read these passages for yourself and discover what they mean for you. And so, because studying these passages, they require faith. They describe real life events that happened thousands of years ago, but are still very much relevant in today's world. And so today's passage, it's one we've read before, like all of these are going to be. And like all of these, it's not a story, but it is a real life event that happened thousands of years ago. So, today we're just talking about the Red Sea, the sea that split, the sea that may be irrelevant to you in your life. Maybe you've only ever heard of the Red Sea from Exodus chapter 14, and that's okay. But it's the sea that split in half to save the Israelites from death or future enslavement from the Egyptians. I just want to start off by reading a couple verses from Exodus chapter 14, and just a little context before this. That the 10 plagues have happened. The death of the firstborn, Passover, has happened. So now the Israelites and Moses and Aaron and God are on their way out of Egypt. So, the Israelites, they've been in Egypt for about 430 years, and they're so close to escaping their enslavement and oppression. But they get to the Red Sea. In front of them was the water, and behind them is the Egyptian army. In that army, it was people who had mistreated them. It was people who had hated them. It was people who had forced them into endless hours of labor. So just imagine being there. Imagine all your life has been spent in Egypt, working tirelessly with no time to rest and not really even knowing God. And then through the plagues and through Moses and through Aaron, God works. And then there's this Passover, and you sacrifice this lamb without spot or without blemish. And you realize that God's mighty hand has been at work this whole time. And you see a new hope and a salvation from your Egyptian slavery. And it's only through God that you're going to be saved. And so you follow Moses and Aaron. You trust God. He's going to lead you out of Pharaoh's grasp. But then you're so close, and then you just get to this massive body of water and wonder, how in the world are we going to escape this? Because in front of you is this ocean, this sea. And you don't have a boat. You don't have time to go get a boat. You don't have time to build a boat. Because behind you is the Egyptian army. And you see them. And you see that those are the people that mistreated you, that once forced you into labor endlessly. But the first thought that comes to your mind is, when you see that ocean and when you see that sea, is that your first thought is to give up and go back to Egypt. Egypt was rough, you say, but at least we had a place to sleep at night. At least it was, familiar to us. At least it was, it wasn't all that great. It was pretty horrible. At least we had food to eat. We didn't have to cross an ocean but God chose Moses for a reason, and just what I want to do is read some of these past verses here from Exodus 14, and just starting in verse 10. And when the Pharaoh drew near, the children of Israel lifted their eyes, and behold, the Egyptians marched after them, so that they were afraid. And the children of Israel cried out to the Lord, and they said to Moses, because there were no graves in Egypt, have you taken us away to die in the wilderness? Why have you dealt with us to bring us out of Egypt? Is it not the word that you were told in Egypt, saying, let us alone that we may serve the Egyptians? For it would have been better for us to serve the Egyptians that we should die in the wilderness. I mean, how can you say that after all you've been through? After all you've seen God do the past couple weeks, to now being so close to getting out that you want to go right back. But then Moses says in verse 13, do not be afraid, stand still and see the salvation of the Lord, which he will accomplish for you today. Verse 14, the Lord will fight for you, and you shall hold your peace. Verse 16, but lift up your rod and stretch out your hand over the sea and divide it, and the children of Israel shall go on dry land through the midst of the sea. And then verse 18, then the Egyptians shall know that I am the Lord, and I have gained honor for myself over Pharaoh, his chariots, and his horsemen. And then verse 21, the Lord and Moses stretched out his hand over the sea, and the Lord caused the sea to go back by a strong east wind all that night, and made the sea into dry land. The waters were divided. So the children of Israel went into the midst of the sea on the dry ground, and the waters were on a wall on their right hand and on their left hand. That's what happened. That's the story. That's the passage we all know. We know that God chose Moses for a reason. That Moses stood up and just said, God is going to get us through this. We don't have to go back to Egypt, because God is going to get us through this. So Moses lifted up his rod, his staff, reached his hand over the sea, and God split it, allowing the Israelites to walk on dry land. The Israelites saw this sea as an obstacle. But God didn't see it as an obstacle. God saw it as a pathway to salvation. Even though this situation seemed impossible, God brought the salvation. And for us, what that means to us, instead of giving up on things when things get tough, when there's an ocean in front of you, an army behind you, just want to give up, turn to God. this story, this real life, it really happened. What it teaches us that when you feel trapped, when you feel like the way forward is impossible, and maybe the way back's even worse, where do you turn? Well, the only answer that seems right is to turn to God. Ultimately that's what the Israelites did. And that's what we need to do. And ultimately they saw the Red Sea not as a trap, but as the way forward, because they trusted in what God had to say. And we might look at our lives and see obstacles, that seem impossible, and we might try to avoid them or go backwards or even just give up. But God might see those obstacles as a new way, and a way to new life, a way to maybe spread the gospel, a way to maybe reignite our hope in our hearts. Eventually the Israelites believed, and God parted that Red Sea. And all of them crossed on dry lands, not because of their efforts, but because of what God did through Moses. Just when all seems lost, God provided a way. And that's God's plan. Even when it seems like all is lost in your life, God will find a way to get you through it. And it's up to you to turn to Him. And not the world to navigate through your challenges, but turn to God. And God will split those challenges, and you can walk right through them with Him on your faith. The Israelites, they'd been enslaved for generations, yet God worked through them. Even when they feared that He had abandoned them, He reminded them that He was their God, that they were His people, and that He would deliver them. In our lives, we're going to face obstacles. That's just the reality of life. Those obstacles may seem impossible. Maybe as impossible as the Red Sea felt to the Israelites. Whether it's distractions like our phones or bad habits we have, or people in our life, or doubts we have, pray to God that He will split those obstacles so that you can walk through them hand in hand with Him, so that whatever seems impossible to us, it is always possible for God. But it's up to us to let Him guide us. The Red Sea's parting serves as an example for us. God provided a way for His people to be saved, and He can do the same for us spiritually. When you feel trapped or you see there's no way out, face that challenge head on and ask God to lead you through it. Walk in faith, relying not on your power, but on the power of God. Because the Israelites walked through the Red Sea on dry land by the power of God and through their faith. God may not literally split open an ocean for us to walk through, but He can remove obstacles in our life by guiding us through our challenges. Whatever is hindering you, ask God to walk with you, and you will overcome. This story, this real life event, is incredible. And it may be something you glance over in a Bible study because you've read it so many times, but it holds a profound lesson for us today. Whatever you face, turn to God, not the world. Through God, the Israelites walked on dry land. Through faith, you can navigate your life. Walk confidently knowing that God has brought you this far, and don't turn back to the world. Turn to Him and share that with others. Instead of turning to the world, turn to God. Whatever obstacle is in front of you, ask Him to split it so you can walk right through it. Trust Him to guide you through the challenges of your life. It may not seem clear at first, but the light is brighter at the end of the tunnel. And Jesus has won and the devil has lost. No matter what the world says, God will prevail. Jesus overcame death so that we may one day enter into heaven. Right now, He intercedes for us at the right hand of God. If you believe this, do not keep it to yourself. Live it out. Share with others how God has brought you through your life, how God has brought you this far in life. Don't turn back. like the Israelites. Remain faithful like Moses and the heroes of the faith. Turn to God when you need help the most. If you turn to God every day, He will split whatever sea blocks your path. I hope and pray you turn to Him no matter what the world throws at you, because God is greater than everything in this world.